Welcome to the Explainer. So today we're diving headfirst into the absolutely captivating world of J.C. Dorset's steampunk romance novel, Stars of Darkbriar. Now, if you're a fan of stories that seamlessly blend intricate mechanical world building with just intense, palpable chemistry, you are in for an absolute treat. Our entire focus today is really unpacking the dangerous allure of Darkbriar. We're going to look at exactly how the author masterfully builds this atmospheric and romantic tension, layering external threats on top of internal desires until they literally reach a boiling point. It's this brilliant study in contrasting elements, and honestly, I am so excited to guide you through it.
I mean, just look at how Dorset throws us into the deep end right from the very first chapter. We're in the middle of a thunderstorm, and our heroine, Zoe Heriot, delivers this incredible line to Lord Elias Darkbriar. Zoe arrives at the manor completely drenched from the squall, needing Elias's help to decipher a map to the legendary Heart of Darkbriar. And when he warns her that she's playing with fire, she doesn't back down. Actually, scratch that. She leans completely into the danger. It's such a perfect hook because it instantly immerses us in this electric dynamic, a relationship that's totally defined by friction, risk, and this undeniable gravitational pull.
All right, let's get into Section 1. Welcome to Darkbriar Manor, a world of clockwork and shadows. See, in Dorset's world, the setting isn't just some painted backdrop, right? It's practically a living, breathing entity that shapes every single interaction. The author immediately uses sensory contrast to build the mood here. You have the rigid, highly predictable rhythm of the clockwork inside the manor, pushing right up against the wild, chaotic storm raging outside. And that's not just set dressing. It perfectly mirrors the central conflict of the whole story. That struggle between control and chaos, between calculated logic and wild, untamed emotion. The manor itself is just humming with this tension.
Because Darkbriar isn't your average grand estate. It's a marvel of steampunk engineering, and frankly, a lot of paranoia. We're talking clockwork sentries armed with loaded pistols, massive libraries with hidden collections accessed by disguised levers, pneumatic lifts, the whole shebang. It shows us this dangerous mechanical environment that perfectly mirrors the looming external threats of the story. The world is full of shadows, deep secrets, and literally steam-powered explosions just waiting to happen. It makes the allure of safety and the absolute thrill of danger so much more potent.
Which brings us to Section 2, Logic versus Primal Desire, the Engineer and the Lord.
So, that dangerous allure of the setting, it gets amplified tenfold by this brilliant juxtaposition between our two protagonists. On one hand, we have Zoe. She's an astronomical engineer who processes the entire world through equations and variables. She rocks practical waistcoats and tool belts, and her fingers are constantly stained with ink and machine grease. And then we have Lord Elias Darkbriar. He's primal, instinctual, and haunted by a tragic past that makes him fiercely, dangerously protective of his lands and his people. He's the rogue lord to her brilliant engineer. It's pure chaos and order colliding.
And this exchange captures their dynamic so perfectly. Picture this, they're in the dark library, the power has just gone out, and Elias has his hand resting on her waist. He asks, "Must you analyze everything?" She just fires back, "It's what I do." And then he challenges her with, "And what does your analysis tell you about this?" Their opposing worldviews literally crash into each other here. Elias is using Zoe's logical defense mechanisms as the very gravity pulling them closer. He's basically challenging her to apply her rigid formulas to the incredibly messy, unpredictable reality of human attraction.
Dorset plays with this equation motif all throughout the text, and it's so much fun. Zoe is constantly trying to process this highly illogical, passionate romantic tension using strictly scientific terminology. When Elias touches her, she tries to categorize her racing heart and flushed skin as just automatic physiological responses. She literally tries to blame the ambient light conditions. But, as you'll see, when you combine the variables of their personalities, the gravity of their attraction, and the friction of their opposing worldviews, the result is this unpredictable passion that completely short-circuits Zoe's analytical mind.
Let's move into Section 3, the escalation, from the library to the cellar.
Now, you might be wondering, what actually happens when the danger stops being theoretical and becomes incredibly physically real? When the threat isn't just an emotional risk, but a literal life-or-death situation? Well, this is where Dorset masterfully hits the gas on the pacing. That simmering tension between Zoe and Elias gets thrust straight into a crucible of survival.
The pivot here is explosive. Literally, Rutherford's men, the Mechanist Guild, breach the manor using military-grade steam-compressed charges. The blast physically rocks the foundation of the estate. This forces Elias and Zoe into this frantic flight through the manor, relying on this clockwork sentries to buy them just enough time as they race through the kitchens. Finally, they find sanctuary hiding in an ancient, abandoned wine cellar deep underground. And just like that, the external danger instantly accelerates their internal character dynamics. There's no time left for posturing or overanalyzing. They're suddenly just fighting for their lives.
Once they're trapped down there, Dorset employs this intense sensory contrast that is just brilliant. Think about their environment. It's freezing, damp stones, stale air, total oppressive darkness. But Elias has been injured, generating the burning heat of an open wound. As Zoe tends to him, literally tearing her petticoat to make bandages, the cold decay of the room is directly juxtaposed with their feverish intimacy and these raw emotional confessions. It's like the darker and colder the room gets, the hotter and brighter their connection burns.
And it's in this freezing, pitch-black cellar that Elias finally drops his guard completely. He tells Zoe about the North Tower tragedy. He confesses that his brother died falling from the tower during a storm. All because Elias, who was young and foolish at the time, dared him to climb it. This deeply vulnerable confession in the dark strips away the very last of Elias's arrogant facade. It lets Zoe see the profound protective guilt that actually drives him. He's not just some rogue lord, he's a man terrified of losing anyone else he cares about. And that makes his allure to Zoe absolutely undeniable.
All right, Section 4, Escaping the Mechanist Guild, Zoe's Calculated Breakout.
So eventually, Zoe is captured by Rutherford's mercenaries and thrown into a dungeon cell. And this is where her unique allure, her brilliant, highly calculating mind, takes absolute center stage. Because she doesn't panic, she calculates. 14 minutes is the exact mathematically calculated window Zoe observes between the mercenary guard rotations. While pacing her freezing cell, she refuses to give in to despair. Instead, she treats her captivity as an engineering problem that simply requires a solution.
She doesn't just sit around waiting for Elias to ride in on a white horse and save her. Nope. She engineers a highly calculated, incredibly tense prison break using pure physics. First, she identifies that the iron bars are exactly 48% compromised by rust. Then, she whips out a concealed multi-tool she designed herself to file down the weakest point. And finally, she applies maximum torque and leverage with her own body weight to bend the Victorian iron just enough to squeeze her shoulders through. It is an escape built entirely on intellect and material science, and it is glorious.
Once she's out of the cell, she bumps into a towering mercenary. And again, Dorset gives us this magnificent detail, 2.7. Zoe neutralizes this massive guard, not with brute strength, because obviously, no way, but by finding a structurally compromised block of limestone in the wall that weighs exactly 2.7 kilograms. She calculates the ideal impact point, the necessary trajectory, and just whams him right in the face. It is so deeply satisfying to see her weaponize her intellect in such a visceral, high-stakes moment. And right as Zoe completes her escape and drops the guard, the corridor is suddenly rocked by these systematic, tactical breaching explosions. Elias has arrived. This is the explosive convergence of their two worlds right here. Zoe's cold, calculated logic and applied physics collide perfectly with Elias's fierce, protective fury in those dungeon corridors. They are two halves of a whole, chaos and order, finally operating in perfect destructive symmetry. Which really brings us to the core of what makes Dorset's world so incredibly captivating. True allure isn't just about safety, is it? It's that thrilling collision of danger, intellect, and passion. J.C. Dorset has crafted this brilliant romance where intellect is the actual catalyst for passion, and where the mechanical world perfectly mirrors the wild beating of the human heart. If you want to see exactly how this explosive reunion plays out, you absolutely have to dive into Stars of Darkbriar for yourself. So I'll leave you with this. What equation would you use to solve the incredibly complex problem of Elias and Zoe? Think about it and keep exploring.